this session is about doing OER on the chip in general, and our aim is to conduct research in public spaces that engage people into doing, aggregating resources and providing a space into conducting learning, if you like. The aim of this talk and next one partly is to sort of introduce this idea of a distributed mentorship. How does it work exactly? What are the dimensions of peer learning? So it's going to be theory heavy, if you like, and then it's going to provide some empirical insights. So when people aggregate around free resources online and create an online space that is not necessarily affiliated with a mainstream university like P2PU, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Several dimensions, sort of several perspectives emerge. Like, for example, we all know what it means to be a member of an online community. We are members of communities in general, and peer interaction happens anyway. So I'm going to give you a very, very brief overview on peer-to-peer university and offer some analytical insights. Focusing on two courses, a very general overview about what happened in open creative nonfiction writing and copyright for education. So we're going to offer some conclusions about, sort of several evaluative work and implications for the future. And the next paper is going to offer some in-depth perspectives also on the network, on the sort of focusing on specific users and identifying the sort of social network. So what is a peer-to-peer university? And its founder is just walked in. I saw him, I think. It was a community that was created over a year ago, just over a year ago, with the intention to put a social wrapper around open access and free courseware materials that are online. And the aim was exactly what sometimes is missing from mainstream courseware material, sort of apart from a few exceptions, of course, and one of them is OpenLearn, the Open University UK's site, is the space, the public space where people aggregate to debate, deliberate, create resources, and so on. So there was a community already, according to my view, of volunteers coming from, and activists coming from the open content, the open access community, the open software community, and lots of people that wanted to experiment from several types of motivations, because they want to give their knowledge for free, because they're hackers, because they want to experiment with instructional design or learning design, and aggregate other people and like-minded individuals or interested communities to learn around short courses. They could be workshops, they could be something like a vocational course, like the copyright for education, that has the format of a workshop, but they also could be something like a learning club, a book club, for example. Or it could be something experimental and creative, like the non-fiction creative writing, which is a mixed genre between, sort of journalistic writing and sort of autobiographical, self-reflective writing. So what the way that courses are developed is around collaborative development, and there are several mediating artifacts. In the first cycle, the wiki was used largely to aggregate interested people that wanted to sort of put a course together. And the common user actions is like people contribute, discuss, share, and reflect during a 6-week period. I met with several P2Pers at the OpenEd conference last year, and we sort of started to think of ways of in which we could sort of explore this space as it evolved. So and then we try to narrow down what is the, the sort of, what is the relationship sort of between mentors, sort of volunteer tutors, mentors as they emerge, interested students, and so on. So I was inspired by these communities of inquiry framework, which is sort of puts educational experience in the middle, it sort of works around three dimensions: the teaching presence, the social presence, and the cognitive presence. Of course, teaching presence, it's by Garrison and Anderson, and it has been expanded since. It has been used a lot in higher educational, in virtual learning, online learning environments within higher education settings. So teaching presence has to do with instructional design, organization of the course, but it also has to do with the sort of type of the communicative patterns that are required for a tutor to sort of the mediating language, if you like, to enable communication amongst what is the course about, and facilitate social presence, which is it relates to both teacher presence and student presence. Sort of, it's not just setting up the climate, but also sort of supporting discourse or mentoring and facilitating modes. So within P2PU, obviously the common mentoring and facilitation modes are the hierarchical, the cooperative, or the autonomous, but obviously what happens with most online non-mainstream courses is that instructor behavior is based on contribution. It's sort of a cooperative model where people sort of create, have an implicit idea and becomes explicit through discussion and aggregation of materials. The idea is to within sort of setting up the climate and supporting discourse is to provide technical feedback and support discussion management. The second theoretical perspective comes from social media. We're talking about communities here, communities of people that have a shared interest and come together with the purpose of developing, conducting learning, if you like, as one of the founders put it, but also dispersed individuals that again shared an interest and might use this space to not necessarily get accreditation for something they do, but expand their knowledge. So the key question was also, is P2PU a productive network learning environment, if you like, in many ways? So the dimensions that we've used, sort of looking in there, where sort of the strands in participation. What was the interface, the technical interface, something that would support identity building? Was there any dimensions about group awareness, a shared language and discourse, not only amongst the instructors or the mentors that were part of the community, but also what was developing amongst the students? So the objects of analysis were like these dimensions of self-representation, and then peer behavior models, like how users or learners, if you like, participated in assigned activities, and how experiential perspectives evolved, but also what are the sort of communicative patterns that emerge. So these sort of the dimensions of the methodology, the observational methodology, if you like in participation, and the issue of sustainability and engagement and commitment was a key, a metric, if you like. And then, as I said, self-representation and identity is an interesting idea, but also cohesion. Do people understand what certain outcomes are, and how do they divert from certain instructions, if you like, in order to take control of their own learning? Are they creative? one of the courses sort of evolved completely in the first cycle of running and sort of took a completely different turn of what was intended, but it was quite creative. So now, going back to the idea of the teaching presence and the role of the tutor or instructor, if you like, all the courses share a common sort of 7 stages, if you like, in their development. Initially, somebody identifies generic content headings and aggregates several resources, put several activities online, and it's quite important, I think, that there are certain pedagogical designs or activities and instructions that contextualize how people can engage with the learning resources. So the course runs for 6 weeks, and then within the course of the 3 cycles that it's actually running the 3rd cycle, P2PU now, we've seen a lot of updates, new courses emerge, some courses die as well on the way, or and so on. Here, for example, we see differences in the interface from the first phase cycle to the second. It's a very, very it's a part of a screenshot, but it has to do with the Open Creative Nonfiction Writing course. And in the second, which is the second screenshot, I have highlighted the way that the tutor reflects on the way that certain things worked in the first, how she diverted the instruction, the sort of learning design in the second phase to make it more adjustable to the 6-week outline. Again, we see from a sort of wiki-based interface that the first cycle was based on something that was enabled more structured sort of interface, if you like. What is important to see here in the Copyright for Educators course is that members are more easily represented. You see who's got an admin or instructional role, and who's sort of a punter, if you like, sort of a student, but also the forums can be identified, the course material could be more easily structured, although it didn't quite work in the course of the course. What is important also to hear is that in the summaries within this course is that there were clear, I've developed this diagram to see the ways in which, if you look from the top left and sort of going anti-clockwise, it's important to see how a course like Copyright for Educators was developed by putting together 3 to 6 instructors or tutors, if you like, who had a blended role between somebody who's taken control of putting the materials together and deciding upon the learning outcomes, but also using an interface to engage users into developing certain tasks, to design and moderate and offer feedback, and how in the middle there, how new resources emerge combining the learning outcomes. But it's important to see in the learning outcomes that what was present in the way that the course was organized in the beginning is that it combined the informative, the cognitive, and the practical dimensions quite clearly and set up the scene for audience expectations, if you like, and it's one of the most popular courses. But role trails and are important as well as, you know, and providing a space for self-representation that is also dependent on the different nature of courses. For example, in the Open Creative Nonfiction Writing course, reflection often combines the empirical, the anecdotal, the confessional, and the professional. And in that course, tutor offered during the first cycle of P2PU, the tutor was consistently present, if you like, and other students. It was a very small group of students that some of whom came from the community already, sort of emerged as giving feedback and sort of providing mentoring support to others. But it's quite important, as I've seen it, sort of to get quite personal and affective tones within the student interaction amongst the forums, especially. Right. I have to go through this quite quickly, and we're going to give you some more insight in the second presentation about the sort of ways that we focused on specific students and looked at these discursive and informational patterns within the copyright course. But what in general, the overview in the courses I've looked at is that mentoring patterns are both ad hoc and organized, and there are distinctions between the role of instructors and students taking and mentoring role. The peer interaction patterns switch from the sort of informational, sharing resources, annotating materials, responding to assignments, to more practical or social dimensions that are important for engaging sort of the community and proving to be sustainable. There are several challenges in representing these observations and putting the analytical insights across the board for the entire cohort of courses, and it's also very difficult to generalize the insights, because what I've noticed is that a lot of it, the way that courses develop or engage volunteer students to becoming mentors have a lot to do with the shared interests, the development of the community, but also the sort of form of the course. So some insights about distributed mentorship and peer learning is that there is explicit leadership needed, I think, often, and I think the way that courses are presented, the idea of the explicit design is important into aggregating students. But then it's important also to provide agency to students to take control of their learning. So what else is important is whether learner output is sufficiently mapped and promoted and that's quite important for taking the course from one stage to the next. And we're going to go into the next presentation when we sort of map relations between the cognitive and the social network a bit more clearly and in depth. Thank you.